Hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Team Jesus Outdoors. Hey guys, today we just got a few quick tips for you on jigging for walleye in the Detroit River. Paul and I hear a lot of guys ask, and I read a lot on Facebook, guys that are new to the game, or guys that have only jigged once or twice and fail to have success, or don't have the success that they would like to have. We'd like to offer a couple of quick tips on things that you can do to improve your jigging game. I think the first thing I want to mention, I've had this discussion with several charter captains in the past. The guy running the trolling motor should be using the lightest jig in the boat. So more often than not, that's going to probably be a 3/4 ounce jig. So if the guy on the trolling motor runs a 3/4 ounce jig and everybody in the back of the boat runs a 1 ounce jig, that's more often than not the ideal scenario. The idea is the guy who's right on the trolling motor, his jig is directly in line with the trolling motor and is going to respond much quicker to the movement of the trolling motor, where the guys in the back, as the boat sways and drifts, the guys in the back, their jigs are not going to react as quickly to the sharp movements of the trolling motor. So the guy on the trolling motor ought to have the lightest jig in the boat, with everybody behind him with a heavier jig.
Right in the face, guy!
With water or baby batter?
A little bit of everything.
For new guys in the boat, you might even want to have 1.5 ounce jigs, because the most important thing out here is feeling the bottom. If you are not in direct contact with the bottom at all times, you're not jigging. Another thing that I see very commonly guys doing wrong is not paying attention to jigging cadence. When the water's really cold early in the season, you want to keep your jig very close to the bottom. You don't want to raise your jig way off the bottom, and you don't want to do anything in fast movements. But you want to keep your jig near to the bottom, and you want to barely be moving that jig. In fact, a lot of times you kind of lift an inch or two, pause, feel it back down to the bottom. Lift an inch or two, pause, feel it back down to the bottom. But I think the most important thing to keep in mind, when somebody in the boat catches a fish or two, everyone else in the boat should be paying attention to what was that guy's jigging cadence.
Some guys are just jigging real slow, like it's not even on their mind. They're just every once in a while they'll lift it up.
That's the problem, is that they're not paying attention to it.
And
the problem isn't that they're doing it wrong, it's that they're not paying attention to it. I hear guys ask, how come the guy next to me in the boat catches 3 times as many fish as I do? Well, he's probably got the jigging cadence that's perfect for that day. So when somebody else is catching the fish, pay attention to their jigging cadence and try to mimic that jigging cadence. If they're really popping the jig or snapping the jig, then you want to imitate that. If they're barely moving their jig off the bottom, you want to imitate that. But pay attention to jigging cadence. Another thing for you guys that are taking your own boats out, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Last year 2020 season, the Detroit River was clearer than most of us have ever seen the river before. You could see down 10 feet and deeper in many spots. When the river's that clear, the fish are very aware of the presence of boats, which makes catching those fish much tougher. She killed my stinger hook somehow. One of the better fish I've had in a couple of weeks. Last year, for instance, a lot of guys like myself were exclusively fishing low light conditions. Once we figured out that the clear water was a problem, we switched over to exclusively fishing low light conditions. First couple hours of the morning, last couple hours of the evening, low light conditions made all the difference last year. This year, the water's still very, very clean, but only in spots. So the trick this year seems to be finding that stained water. Avoid the real muddy water, but find that stained water, particularly the water that has kind of a nice green tint to it, has really been the right colored water this year. But if you stop on a spot and the water's gin clear and you can see your jig 6, 8, 10 feet down, go look for some water with a little bit more stain to it. That seems to have made a big difference this year. Another thing, the clearer the water is, the more important your color of your plastics become. In really clear water, your more natural colors, like this blue ice, for example, is a pretty natural color. I've even on occasion switched to white, another natural color. The clearer the water, the more you want to pay attention to the color of your plastics. In very, very stained water or dirty water, you almost always want to go with dark colors. Dark purples, dark browns, black. But pay attention to watercolor and use the appropriate colored soft plastics. Here's something I see a ton of guys do wrong. I see a lot of guys that when they're jigging, they'll hold their rod up at a 9 o'clock or 11 o'clock angle as they're jigging. This is the worst position to hold your rod in, because when you get a bite, you don't have much room to set the hook. I want my rod tip pointed towards the water, and really as close to the water, the closer to the water the better, because when I get a bite, I get a much, much better hook set. I know we talked about jig weight, but another thing to keep in mind with the weight of your jig, for newer anglers, stay away from the light jigs. In the shallower water of the lower end of the river or up on some of your shallower flats, a lot of guys can get away with a 1/2 ounce jig. I've even heard of guys jigging with as light as a 3/8 ounce jig. But there's really very little advantage to jigging with a light jig. I would say for the new angler, you probably don't need anything in your box other than 3/4 ounce, 1 ounce. And until you become really, really comfortable jigging, I would stick with that 1 ounce. Again, the most important thing to keep in mind out here is to keep contact with the bottom. The minute you're not in contact with the bottom, you're no longer fishing. At that point, you're just dragging bait along. Hey guys, you know, we always say around here, there are only 2 kinds of men in this world. There are men that need Christ, and there are men that need more of Christ. I hope that you guys will do some self-assessment and decide which of those you are, and take your next steps towards the Lord Jesus Christ this year. If you have questions about things of faith, or heck, even if you got questions about fishing, don't hesitate to drop me an email. I've always got my email in the description box below the video. We're always happy to hear back from you guys, respond with you guys. You can find me on Facebook, John Carter on Facebook. You can find Team Jesus Outdoors on Facebook. But if you have questions about these things, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help you guys. Hey, thanks for smashing that like button. Thanks for leaving comments. If you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. And those of you guys that are supporting us on Patreon, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Guys, we appreciate all your support. God bless, tight lines. Hope to see you guys on the river. After a little bit of searching for the past couple weeks, we finally found a little bit bigger fish. Still not giants, but a little bit better caliber of fish.